I think it's very, very easy to underestimate online just how big markets can be. And like, it's like if you get 10 customers, that means you probably can get 100. And if you can get to 100, probably means you get to 1,000. When you get to 1,000, you can probably get to 10,000. And if you get to 10,000, you can probably get to 100. And I think it's hard to think that way. That's like, hey, the internet connects us all. And if you're solving a problem that is a real tactile problem for people, they will explore it and take a look and test it out and try it.
Hey, I'm Joe Fier, and welcome to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. This is where we talk all about building businesses so they give you the freedom and fuel for your life. I'm not here to help you build a billion-dollar business, but I am here to help you create a business with systems that work for you so you can make more money than you need just by working part-time. I was a chronic hustle mode kind of guy, and I want to share my experiences and mentors I've met along the way to help you reframe things to be the most effective as an entrepreneur. I wish I had this guidance and insight when I was younger, so that's what I'm doing here for you. Please share and enjoy. Your sales software shouldn't be a bummer, and when you step inside your CRM, you should actually feel equipped to do your best work. It's kind of like being in the pilot seat by having all the easy-to-use controls. Well, that's what HubSpot's doing with the new Sales Hub. It's all designed to have you win quarter over quarter, year over year, all the way from the intuitive prospecting workspace using AI-powered tools. The point is to reduce your workflow, all the work on managing leads, the follow-ups, basically making closing deals a no big deal at all. So this is how you can wrangle your day-to-day tasks using a seamless platform that basically navigates all the contacts, calls, analytics, all in one spot. ChatSpot is also the AI-powered tool that helps you personalize a lot of things in your CRM. It's basically like little assistants working for you. You just got to prompt it, and basically it pulls up a contact, sums up different sales, or researches your competitors. It helps you automate a lot of things during the sales pipeline so your team or yourself can take your time back. And the whole point is to make this easier and more effective for you. So this is the time for you to close more deals and get you on track for your best Q1 yet. Learn more about HubSpot Sales Hub over at hubspot.com/sales. Hey, Chris, it's awesome to have you here. I've been a fan of your show for a while now. You and Sylvie co-hosting that. It's called Talking Too Loud. It's also on HubSpot's network. Thanks for being here on the show.
It's funny, when we started this, I've done other forms of shows. Like before Talking Too Loud, I had a show called Brandwagon. And Brandwagon was so fun to put together, but it was insane. It was like a weekly interview show, but dressed up as a late night, kind of like a late night talk show thing, where I would interview the guests, and we had all these segments, and we were also trying to get a car, a Brandwagon, all this kind of stuff. And we made the pitch video for that a month before we'd started recording the first episode. And we said, in 5 weeks, we're launching the show. And it was so crazy and so fun. And honestly, in hindsight, performed incredibly well. But we were basically all dead at the end of it. It was like 10 episodes and we just like keeled over. And so we started Talking Too Loud. We said, okay, the interviews in Brandwagon, people loved them. And actually a lot of the feedback was like, we want more depth. We were doing like 20-ish minute interviews. Or like, we want the full conversation. So Talking Too Loud, let's do that, but let's make it just that. And let's try to make it something where we feel really confident we're going to be able to do 100 of these, not like 5 or 10. And let's just not really judge it until we get to 100. And that's kind of how we started it. And then, of course, as you know, you do anything enough, you learn, you figure out what works. Ideally, if it's fun, you keep going. And it's been fun and it's kept going. It's done really well, which is great.
I totally remember that show. I used to watch it. It's kind of like a talk show style. You had Wistia branded all up. It looked really slick. The thing I liked the most was that you put a face to the Wistia brand. I thought that was super important.
I think that is look, that's always been important. We kind of discovered that by accident. I've told this story before, so I'll keep it short, but we tried to pretend to be a big successful company when we were first starting. So if you went to our website, you looked at the team page, it would be like management. It didn't say management, it said the team, it said management. And there were 4 of us, to imply there were more people than the management. There weren't, that's all it was. And we didn't have our pictures because we didn't want anyone to know how young we were. I was 22 when we started. We had like a laundry list of accomplishments. They included accomplishments from college and maybe some high school ones thrown in there. Like it was just exactly. But we were trying to seem big, and I think if you were to go back and look for this on the like Wayback Machine, you'd be like, that doesn't look big, it looks small. But I didn't understand that at the time. And it was actually when we started really being comfortable sharing who we were, and the fact that we updated the team page to go when we'd hired 2 more people. We felt really guilty they weren't on the site because they couldn't show their parents that they actually worked here. That's all we had. And so we updated it. We had these goofy photos of us. And my co-founder it was one of someone's birthday on the team, and my co-founder, Brendan, thought it would be funny is if you put an Easter egg on the page. And so if you typed dance on the page, it would randomly switch between 3 different images of us, and it would play music and lasers would show up. And this was just like a joke. And what ended up happening is that page went viral, and people loved the Easter egg of this thing. And it was actually the least professional we'd ever been perceived as, like in our B2B selves, right? It was like the least professional we'd ever been. And yet 2 weeks later, we used to have a 2-week trial. 2 weeks later, we got the most new sales we had gotten in a day. And I think it was like this moment of purity. Like we weren't big enough for it to be lost in the data. We were so small. This is the only way you could tell and see it was working. And it was like, wait, it's not professional. It's just us. And people like it. And so it was this spark that like turned into the fire that I think is like a lot of how I still think about the brand is like, you got to put people out there. You got to let someone connect with people. And actually, I think you didn't ask this question, but with where we're going with AI, I think that people are going to become even more important than they've been historically.
Go a little deeper there, if you don't mind.
Oh, well, when anyone can make a fake AI version of themselves or just a fake person in Midjourney and put it into HeyGen and, animate it, we're going to start to think a talking head is not real by default. And that seems scary. But the question is, how will you know if someone is real? And if you do, will you treat the information from them differently? And I think you're going to know someone's real based on meeting them in person, based on spending enough time with them in different situations online to understand that this really seems like somebody who's real. There's AI talking heads that are stable today, pretty convincing. Walking around, lighting changes, not convincing. And if you do connect with somebody in person, if you do feel like you know somebody, you're going to trust them like probably 10 times more than the thing that is completely AI driven that you know is AI driven. And so I think it's going to basically mean like we're going to need to lean into in-person things, lean into real conversations, lean into the things that are not scalable that we've always done. And that's going to create the trust. And then if you have, trust in Joe or Chris, then you've seen us enough, you've interacted with us, then that will actually stand out even more than it does today.
So how do you suggest we stay authentic and real and still leverage AI in our business?
I think some simple things are going to be like when you're making videos, do them in environments where it's harder to fake. So like walking videos, lighting changes, multiple people on camera at the same time, selfie videos where we see like basically seeing people interacting with each other, very hard to fake. It's gonna be a long time, I think, before that is like really easy. And it might never happen because also there's gonna be no point to it. Like people are gonna go for the most obvious things to start. And I think it's gonna be kind of similar to what we saw with like when you could automate email marketing. So, before automated email marketing, it was like, I sent you an email. And then it was like, oh, people send emails pretending to be me. And then eventually people might make these personalized ones and the merge tags and all this kind of stuff. And we're awash with email, which makes it actually pretty easy to ignore. But if you can find a way, again, if you get an email from someone that you feel like you actually know, you will read that one and you're going to know the other ones are fake or spam. And I think we're going to be entering a world like that. And by the way, I'm not saying that AI is bad for video. I think there's a ton of things that it's already making the video creation much easier. And I think it's going to continue to do that. And so I think you can probably make better authentic videos more easily today with AI than you could before, because you can automate and augment some of the production processes. But I think this like specific avataring of things and AI voice cloning it's gonna create a lot of issues that are hard to predict, and it's gonna create more demand for trust.
All right, take us back a little bit to when you were raising some capital at the very beginning and when you were starting to land your first clients.
When we started, my co-founder and I really didn't understand any of this stuff. We didn't understand anything about fundraising or what was possible. Like, I'd heard the term venture capital. I had met a couple of venture capitalists, but I didn't really understand what they did. And so when we started, we had some very meager savings, and we said, all right, we're going to survive on this. So our funding was basically trying to figure out how to live as cheaply as possible. And that looked like moving into a 10-person house and, living and working in this house with a bunch of friends, sharing food with all of them, just getting expenses as low as possible. I remember it was to the degree where back then we needed printers because, we would print out a deal and people would sign it. And so I remember running out of ink and being like, well, we can't buy ink. Ink is so expensive. And so I went to my roommates. I'm like, someone's got to have a printer from college they're not using somewhere in the basement. And they're like, yeah. And you go dig around, find the printer, go print out your piece of paper, go try to get the deal signed. And that is just what we were doing. And so that was like the initial approach, is just cut costs as much as possible. And then it took us about, we started 2006, took us about a year to the day to get the first paying customer for what Wistia is today. And as we did that, we got about one new paying customer per month, which felt incredibly slow. To go like 30 days or 29 days out of a month and not get a deal felt painful. But actually, in hindsight, they were pretty incredible customers. Medical device company, big television company, a large telecommunications company, Cirque du Soleil was one of our early customers. It was kind of remarkable in hindsight that, like, in our first 10 customers, we had this mix of businesses. They were all like, they're mix of sizes, and they were trusting us for the same thing. And when we started to realize what was happening, I remember doing a demo sitting on the foot of my bed, trying to pretend to be big, right? And trying to convince somebody, that we couldn't even see each other on video back then. It was just on audio, on audio call, trying to convince somebody they should use Wistia, and them being convinced, and me thinking, I think we need help. Like, I think we might be onto something. And so we ended up figuring out about raising angel money, and we went and decided to raise $650,000 in angel money. And we wanted to do that to get help. So we had met two people we wanted to join the team. They were both more experienced than us. We thought, we get these two people, things will happen faster. So we took us about 4 months, raised a round, hired these two people. It was still a slog. And just as we were running out of money, like literally, we had a big legal bill that we didn't expect that showed up. Like, oh God, like might be the last month of Wistia. Right at that same time, we had launched a new version of Wistia where you could self-service purchase. It had embedding with analytics. We'd built analytics for people to privately share video and understand if their teams were watching it. And we got requests, can you make it so this works to the videos on our website? And so we started, doing that, and it seemed like it was going to work. So we launched a new version of Wistia where you could do that, and you could sign up without talking to us. And we were now, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but we're 3.5 years into when we started. We have like 30 paying customers. And in the course of 3 months, just as we were running out of money, we had gone from 30 to 200. And so it was clear we were onto something. And we had never seen that in this, this pace before. So I went back to our original angel investors, one angel investor in particular, and I said, hey, I got good news and bad news. Like, bad news is we're running out of money. Like, it's bad. But the good news is, like, look at this customer graph. Like, I think we figured it out. And they were incredible. And they're like, yes, that is amazing. You should raise more money. And I want to help you raise the money. I'm like, okay. They're like, yeah, raising money sucks. Like, we should raise this money quickly so you can get back to building the business. I'm like, that sounds great. How are we going to do it? And they're like, all right, fly down to Florida, meet me. I'll put you on my jet. I'll fly you around the East Coast and we'll go meet a bunch of people who I think would be interested in this. And we did that. And basically at the end of a day, we'd raised $800,000. And he goes, there you go. And so we closed that round. And the funny thing of that moment too, is we told all those investors like, hey, we got this figured out. We're not going to need to raise more money. And they're like, they actively said this out loud. They're like, we don't believe you, but that's fine. Just go ahead. And we never raised money again. And so we were able to scale the business, scale it the old fashioned way with getting customers who pay you things, for service rendered. And yeah, that's the way the business was for a very long time, from 2006 to 2017.
So you spent 1 year or so developing Wistia without a single paying client. What was your take on that? That must have been gnarly.
I mean, the truth is, we didn't spend a year developing Wistia. We spent a year trying crazy different things. Yeah, I mean, we started with a very different plan, which was it was always in video. That's the one thing that really stayed consistent. Like, we saw online video changing in a big, big way. Like, we started like 6 months after YouTube, and I saw on YouTube this community, this vibrant community taking off at this incredible pace. And I actually had done film and video in college, and I had tried to be part of these online video communities, and none of them were vibrant. None of them actually had like people uploading things on a regular basis. Everything was stale and old, and YouTube was really different. And one of our key insights was like, all right, the bandwidth is there now, like the broadband is there so people can watch videos at home. But also YouTube was doing the encoding of the videos for you. And before that, if you wanted to upload a video online, you had to do the encoding. So you had to know how to do it. And the problem was, there was like, you could encode into Real Player, and the people who had Real Player could watch it. And if you didn't have Real Player, you could watch it, and a few other formats. And so you're taking a risk every time that some percentage of people wouldn't be able to see your video. And YouTube, by doing the encoding all into a format that everyone could watch, that seemed like the key. And so when we started, we said, whatever we do, we're gonna make sure we do that. And the other piece of the puzzle was that YouTube was using open source tools to do the encoding, so anyone could do it. That was the light bulb. And then it was like, the first thing we tried to make was a filmmaking competition website where we would get big brands to sponsor the creation of ads. We started for about a month, and then we gave up on that because we realized we had no connections to anybody. And we saw some vague competitor that got bought, and we thought that meant that like we were going to be in trouble. We didn't understand that meant that that competitor was basically going out of business. We tried to make a portfolio website for artists. We did make a portfolio website for artists that we launched that was separate, that got hundreds of users, but we felt like we'd only ever be able to make money with advertising, and we were never going to get it to take off. We did a back-end video hosting and encoding thing. That was the closest to Wistia, because we'd built some of that tech now, and we started to see the value in it. So we were trying to pitch startups on like, using our APIs to add video into their products. People use Wistia for that today, but that was like kind of still pre-Wistia. We were trying a lot of different stuff. And then we talked to our first customer, who basically just said, hey, we need help with video. Can you guys come help us? And we went to talk to them, and they said they wanted a private and secure way to share video. And we're like, why wouldn't you use an FTP server? And they're like, well, we want a place where people can comment and people can organize their videos. There can be access controls. I was like, well, that's funny, because we were just about to build that into this filmmaking site that we've made. Maybe we should make it separate, and then you could just sign up for that. And they're like, that sounds great. And so 2 weeks, we built this thing. We went back to them and like, would you pay $400 a month for this? And they're like, yeah. Like, again, in hindsight, I didn't understand how cheap that was for them. And it was that moment that was like, that was the first version of Wistia.
So tell me about the HBO thing. It wasn't long after that HBO came knocking at your door, right?
We're probably 3 months into this new world. We have like 3 paying customers, and we get connected to somebody who says, hey, I think HBO might be interested in what you're doing. I was like, what are you talking about? And remember, I went to school for film and video. So the dream was like to talk to HBO. And actually, I'd worked on a feature-length documentary, and we tried to get HBO to distribute it, and they were close. And they said no. So here I am, like, just like 2 years later, and HBO might be interested in what we're doing. This is crazy. And so we go talk to HBO about managing all their dailies. So basically, like, you know, the behind the scenes footage that they shoot every day that is not the final edits, like the raw footage. They need to send it to folks who are producers on shows, and they send it to them for approval. They're like, hey, we're making progress, and this is what the acting looks like. This is what the lighting looks like. You know, you can get a sense of what the show is going to be like. And what they were doing at that time is that they, at the end of each day, they would take the dailies, they'd print it on a DVD, they would hand it to a courier. The courier would get on a flight, and they would fly it if they needed to get it to the right producers. And I can't tell you the exact names, but there was someone you have heard of who was producing a show, very, very famous person who they were basically, someone's getting a flight every day, and they're flying the dailies to Ireland so that this person could see it from LA. And they said, can you help us with this problem? And I'm like, so what you need is a private, secure way to share the video, so you could upload it, someone could see it and comment on real time instead of waiting. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, we got that. That sounds great. And they're like, okay. And so then they start testing us, and we're watching, and, you know, you can go, it's like, you know, back then it was like count number 4 or whatever is HBO. And you go in there, the first videos they upload are dailies from the show Sopranos. It's, you know, it's videos that no one's ever seen of these actors that everyone knows. And yet your mind is just kind of being blown. Like, as this is all happening, I can't believe it's happening. I can't believe how fast it's happening. It's just so mind blowing that this is us, like that we did this. And so the long and short of it is that they get really excited, and we have to try to come up with what this deal is going to look like. And we come up with a price. And I should mention, the first customer's paying us $400 a month. The second customer's paying us like, I think maybe $300 a month. The third customer's paying us like $500 a month. That's the range we're talking about. And by the way, I'm excited about that, because our total expenses at this period of time, and I am not lying, this is the truth, this is the real number, for Brendan and I to live, for the servers, for the food, for our basic needs, our total monthly expenses for the both of us is $1,600 a month. So these 3 customers get us pretty close, right? So I don't feel like, before the HBO thing, I don't feel like I need that much. I'm like, we get 1 or 2 more customers, like, we're going to be cash flow positive. This could be insane, right? So the party that we're working with that's introduced us to them is like, all right, comes up with a plan. And they're like, we're going to pitch this deal at $750,000 a year. And I am like, no, this can't be. Like, this is impossible.
I'm going to pause this really fast and shout out another podcast that's on the HubSpot podcast network, the audio destination for business professionals. This one's a podcast hosted by someone I've followed for years. I've read his books. His name is Donald Miller, and he hosts the podcast called Business Made Simple. The whole premise there with that show is that it helps take the mystery out of growing your business. And one of the recent episodes is one with Alex Hormozy, someone else I've followed for years now. And it's all about talking about the uncertainties that we're living in right now in 2024 and beyond, but how we can take our business and shore it up. There's actually 4 principles Alex shares, and Don gets into it as well. So definitely recommend checking that out. So go listen to Business Made Simple, hosted by Donald Miller, wherever you get your podcasts. Are you tired of the hassle of building online sales funnels? You know, I get it. And you started your business for freedom and not to be chained to your laptop all day long. And thankfully, there is an all-in-one platform that makes this process super easy so you can start attracting customers online. It's a tool called Kartra, and it has every tool you need to grow. So every Kartra account comes stocked with a bunch of done-for-you campaigns that are designed, connected, and written for you. All you got to do is customize them to your liking, and you can launch a fully built sales funnel in minutes. So make marketing easy on yourself. Visit www.hustleandflowchart.com/Kartra and snag a free 30-day trial of Kartra. And again, that's hustleandflowchart.com/KARTRA.
but we decide we trust them. Like they know, quote, business better than us. So we trust this other party. We send the price to HBO. They don't say anything. They're just like, whatever, sounds good. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I am really starting to think like this might actually happen. And by the way, this is the time period of this is like, we're raising our first round of angel funding. So in the deck of the angel funding, we're telling investors, here's our current customers and here is our perspective. And obviously HBO is the top of the list. And obviously put the deal size in there. So it says $750,000, whatever. So I'm feeling good. And then I get this call, I discover that there is like going to be a meeting with HBO and it's going to happen in person in LA in 2 days. And the party that's introduced us to HBO, which is going to take some percent of the deal, it's not totally figured out how much, they're going to go to this meeting. I start to get a really bad feeling. And I'm like, ugh, like, this is our company. Like, this is our software. It's our product. Like, I don't know that we cannot be at this meeting because like, we need to know what's being said. We need to know what's being pitched. We need to, all this stuff. And so we, remember, we're still losing money. We've not saved up money. We're a year into this thing. So we've dwindled our savings accounts. We have very little money. But we decide we have to go. And so I call the assistant of the person who I'm talking to. I'm like, where's the meeting happening? And they tell me, and we book flights. We go out to LA and we show up at the meeting. We just show up. Well, hey guys, we're here. And they're like, whoa, like this, even more context on this. Remember, I'm 22. I'm meeting with HBO. Remember, I'm also trying to like present this like businessy vibe to the world. And we meet with their head of production and he's really there. And he's like, I've been looking at this Wistia thing. It looks really cool. And like whoever did this, like has built something great. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe I can't believe that the head of HBO, the production at HBO thinks this thing is great. And he's also like the coolest guy I've ever met. He's like wearing a leather jacket and he's like, he doesn't sit in a chair. He sits up on the counter. Like, it's just all this stuff, it's just like, it's like a caricature of what you would think. And it's like, it's happened in real life. But the thing that they tell us in this meeting is that they love everything about what we're doing, but it's really important that for them to use this, they need it, quote, on-prem. They need it on-premise. So they need a version of Wistia that's hosted on a server in one of their racks, like in one of their closets. And this SaaS thing that we're doing, which is brand new at the time, they're afraid of it. And so we're excited at first. We think this isn't a big deal. And then like we go home and we talk about it more and more and more. We're like, well, if HBO is customer number 4 and they need us on-prem, like we're not going to get them to budge on this thing. Like, it seems unlikely to get them to budge. We could put it on-prem. It does almost nothing. This is the most simple app you've ever seen. Like, we could do it. But like, we're going to need to service this thing. We're going to need to take care of it. So if we do this, it means we're probably going to have to move to LA. That's probably the most likely outcome. And then if we move to LA and HBO is our one customer who's asking us for this, and we know they're going to ask us for other things, and we're going to have to build it for HBO because they're paying us so much money, we're probably going to end up changing what this product is. And we're probably going to make it hyper-focused on this segment of the market, like large studios with custom things, doing it on-prem. And we're like, how many large studios are there? And we're doing the math, $750,000 a year. Like, maybe we can get them to pay more, but we already believe it's so much. We're like, shit, is this going to be like a $5 million market we're just going to tap out? As we're having this conversation in the week following this trip, Brent and I look at each other and we realize we can't do this deal. And even though all we want to do is do the deal and tell everyone we've done the deal and be excited about this, we realize like we think it's going to pigeonhole us and we're going to end up doing something too small. And I know that sounds crazy for a company that's making like $1,300 a month in revenue, but it made sense to us. And so we told the party that had introduced us, we told HBO and they were disappointed and we said no. And then we had to go back and tell all the angel investors that we'd said no and why. And I remember being like, feeling kind of dejected and kind of terrified that we'd made this decision. And also like kind of crazy that we made this decision. But obviously it worked out. And I think like one of the other interesting things in this for me over the years is now having also done angel investments myself and worked with entrepreneurs is like, we actually had clarity on what we want. We were building clarity on what we wanted to do, which is build something for like SMBs, do something at scale, not rely just on one customer, think really long-term, and try to work in like a really big market. And all those things like eventually did come true, but it was a very, very scary thing to say no to and kind of shocking that it even happened.
So this kind of seems like when you developed the North Star of Wistia, right?
It was the beginning of that. And I think if we hadn't been like talking to such a diversity of customers, I think we probably would have done it, right? Like if they had been our first customer, then we probably would have said like, look, the calculus on this is like, we should do it. And if only the only people who were interested were like film production studios, we probably would have done it. It's more just that like our first customers, it was like 10 customers from 10 different industries. That was what was so surprising, was that so many different people were looking for this. I think it's very, very easy to underestimate online just how big markets can be. And like, you know, it's like if you get 10 customers, that means you probably can get 100. And if you can get to 100, probably means you can get to 1,000. When you get to 1,000, you can probably get to 10,000. And if you get to 10,000, you can probably get to 100. And I think it's hard to think that way. That's like, hey, the internet connects us all. And if you're solving a problem that is a real tactile problem for people, they will explore it and take a look and test it out and try it. And like, it came true just more in a way than I ever thought it would.
Is there a framework or some kind of methodology you can share here that helped you build a solid customer base and help you scale your company?
Well, it's funny because also like I put this video out about my goals for 2024, which is something new. I haven't done this before. But I've been trying really hard, like as we talked about earlier, to like really put myself out there more, learn more openly, get more feedback openly, share what I'm learning, all that kind of stuff. And my goals this year are really trying to listen even harder to folks. And what I mean by that is there's often a message behind the message. Or we might be biased to think something's wrong. And you have to overcome your own bias to hear the truth. And so listen harder means like listen and then ask more questions, and then listen and ask more questions, then listen and ask more questions. I also talk about getting closer to customers. And this is something that happens as you scale. Is early days, I mean, I'm giving you really a lot of specifics about a couple customers, right? I knew every specific about every customer. Over time, you end up with graphs. You end up with data and analytics that show you what are the popular features, what people don't like, what do they like, what has a high NPS, what doesn't. And it's really easy to rely on that as opposed to relying on the qualitative, on the ground stories and issues and challenges that people have. And you have to explicitly try to do that. And as a company grows, you have to try to do that in different ways to get closer to the customer. My last goal, just to finish that thought, is like to try not to spin people out as much, because again, one of the other things that happens as a company gets bigger is like, you know, there's more people that you're not working with every day. You could say something that's a thought that I might feel comfortable saying to a friend or someone that I work really closely with. I'm testing it out. I'm trying to get feedback. I'm trying to share something that's in progress, but it doesn't come across like that to somebody who doesn't know you. And so you say one thing and they go do a bunch of work trying to figure it out when that was not the intention at all. So trying to be even more aware of the things that I'm saying. And I think so I say all that as context because I'm still working on it and thinking about it and trying to do right by customers, both qualitatively and quantitatively. But when you go to scaling, I really look very, very closely at like the people who are actually using something. Why are they using it? What benefit do they get? What do they feel like when they use it? What's missing? What's stopping them? If you started using something and stopped using it, why? And the closer you get to that and the specific examples, you can start to see what are the things that are the same across the specific examples of customers using your products. And if you do see things that are similar, if you're thinking about those things in kind of an exponential way, you'll realize like, hey, if this if people are having probably, for example, problems with the product that's not recording things properly, when they're trying to record videos, they're going to stop using, they're not going to tell you that necessarily. They're just going to stop using it. They're going to change their behavior. They're going to do something else. But if you can find a way to make that really reliable, and you could find a way to make it not only reliable, but actually delightful, if you can start to save them time in different ways, suddenly it switches and they're going to start telling lots of people about it. They're going to start using it a lot more. And like this specific example is actually not that unique. Like it's indicative of a much larger problem often. And so, whenever we do something new, we've done a lot of new things at Wistia the last few years. I try to get really close to the customer stories for the first few, the first 5, the first 10. I'm asking questions, the first 100, what does it look like? And then as it starts scaling, you start seeing like each specific thing, each specific challenge that somebody has, if you can fix it or help them overcome it, that doesn't affect them. That affects the other 10,000 people who are using the thing. There's always more nuance than you would think. And I think there's a trick I try to play on myself is if I'm ever in a room with a lot of people, I try to estimate like how many people are in this room and what percentage of the customer base is that. And so like I was at a comedy show that was in an arena, had 10,000 people. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is what 10,000 Wistians would look like. 10,000 people using Wistia, this is what it would look like. And I'm like, fuck, that's a lot of people. And I think we screw it up. We get obsessed with these huge numbers and we forget that there's actual people behind the numbers. And when you actually think about it, there's a lot of small numbers that are really big. And what I mean, you can have 200 people watching an hour-long podcast. That's 200 people is a ton. That's a lot of ton. And I think people, it's really easy because you compare that to like 1 million here or 10 million there, whatever. It feels small and you don't actually do it justice. And I think we lose perspective on that. And I think it's, when you have that perspective, it's like much easier to get excited about the right things and then to learn the right things.
All right, so if someone's about to jump into Wistia or considering it right now, what's something that they really got to know about it?
The thing I would say is like, if you've used Wistia in the past, we've just changed a lot in the last couple of years. So our vision is to be an all-in-one, easy to use video marketing platform, which means hosting and analytics, the ability to create channels of your content, get your content indexed, understand what's performing, collaboration around videos, all that kind of stuff. And so things last year we launched 80 customer facing features that we told them about. Like we launched more than that in terms of bugs, but like 80 features that we announced, 12 in 2022. So huge change for the business and huge change for the customer base. And what you would see if you were to go look through those is basically Wistia is trying to help you make videos, repurpose videos, edit videos, and do kind of all these different things. And we're also making a really big push on webinars in particular. And so our vision is like marketers spend too much time using too many different tools, and the time between tools often like kind of painful. So, you do a live event and then you have to download it and then you put it in an editor and then you have to adjust it and take out the mistakes or delete the black at the beginning and then take out the Q&A and then you re-upload it to something like us, and then you publish it. And so we're trying to get to that place where it's like, and we're mostly there today, where it's like you do a live event, it shows up instantly in your account, and there's an editor, and it's not designed for a professional video editor, it's designed for a marketer. So there's a transcript, you can edit the transcript, you can make quick adjustments and changes, you can then directly publish that onto your site or put it in a channel or send it out to all that kind of stuff. And so it's honestly a lot of the stuff we've talked about in our content for a very long time. We're trying to deliver the product versions of those in the product. And I would say it's like mid 22 is when this all started happening. So just very, very different if you haven't played around with us recently. This sounds funny to say, but shipping product that is good quickly is hard. And we've been around 17 years, and it was really like year 15 and a half, year 16, where we finally figured out how to do it at scale. Where finally it's like, oh, we are shipping a lot of product very quickly on many fronts. And I'm really proud of the product that we're creating. But the way that you get there is with customer feedback. And so that's the other thing I would say is like, if you do get in there and try stuff, like tell me. You can find me on LinkedIn, shoot me notes for your feedback or questions or issues or what have you. And the team craves this stuff. And so that's the other thing I just put out there is like, if you do try us out, please, please, please send us some feedback. It makes it easier for us to build better stuff. and hopefully can reduce pain and make your life a little bit easier in the process.
All right, so I got to shout out Wistia.com. Definitely go over there, see what they're cooking up. It's what we've been talking about here. And go follow along with Talking Too Loud. That's your podcast, Chris. It's super fun, so you'll love it. Lastly, before we wrap up, what's something that you've been totally obsessed with lately that you can share?
I'll just go with the first thing that comes to mind, which is I last year decided that I wanted to read more books, like physical books. I was early adopter to the Kindle. I've done lots of audiobooks over the years. And that felt like a really nice thing. I was like, oh, I'm working out and I'm listening to an audiobook, or I'm commuting and I'm listening to audio. I'm multitasking. It's so great. And last year, for one day, I was just like, you know what? If someone recommends a book to me, I see a book that sounds interesting, I'm going to buy a physical copy of it. I'm just going to put it around my house. And I've put books all over my house. And it's changed my behavior so much, I can't believe it. Like, I went from reading a few books a year to, like, last year I read 15. I've already read one this year, and it's January 4th. And I found that it's been this I know this sounds so simple, but honestly, this behavior change has been just so lovely. And it's meant that I'm spending less time on TikTok and Instagram and just like scrolling, and a lot more time just like thinking and then talking to other people about the stuff. And so I'm just really excited about that right now. And I encourage you, like, if you're considering this, like, give yourself permission, get the books, buy physical copies, litter them around. Because the other thing happens, people ask you about them, like, why is this here? I'm like, I don't know. Someone told me it was good. And then you read it. And the other thing I would say is, if you read a book that sucks, throw it out. Like, but that's kind of what I'm excited about right now. And it's really, the fact that I've already read a book this year completely shocked me. I couldn't believe it. The other thing I'm really excited about is my family does like Secret Santa. And normally when you do it, like, everybody, my family's just a lot of people in it. So it's like, I'm getting my nephew, or I'm getting my brother, or whatever. And everyone puts their list of their stuff that they want. And I expect I'm going to get like stuff that I want, but like socks and like a sweater and whatever. And my older brother this year, in my list of wants, as a joke, I put like an F1 simulator. I was like, no one's going to get me this. It's way beyond the limit of like what people are going to get. And he was just like, I think felt like the older brother energy, and he just decided to go for it. And so on Christmas, I opened up like, a wheel and pedals and a seat and like all this stuff. And then my wife got me PS5. And so now I'm like playing Gran Turismo all the time, and like have like an F1 simulator at home, and it is so fun. It's unbelievable.
Chris, I appreciate you, man. This was a blast. Thank you for spending the time with us here. I got to get my hands all over one of those F1 simulators. I'm already jealous.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for having the podcast. I mean, I think like, building companies is hard. It's really hard. And I think the stories that are told around this stuff, like, hopefully if you're in a situation where you're dealing with this hard stuff, like, it gives you a little glimmer of hope, like you can get through it. Cause that is what it takes. It takes perseverance more than anything. And that's why I love like the stuff you do, is just helping more people, hopefully glean a little bit more perseverance and inspiration to keep going.
Thank you again. Hope you had a fun time listening, y'all, and watching. Until next time, take care. All right. That's what I got for you today. And remember, it's not all about living to work. It's all about working to live, if you need to do the work. But work can be fun, and it should be fueling for your life. So if you enjoyed what you just heard, if you got some nuggets of wisdom that you want to share, or you're just noodling on right now, please go tell others. The way that people find this show and how you can help others get their aha moments is through word of mouth. So if it is telling your friend, telling your family, sending an email to your list, writing a review, or whatever it might be, everything helps. So thank you so much for listening to the Hustle and Flowchart podcast, and I will see you next time.